So going on with this theme about, coming home, and this show really being about, you know, channeling the mother, like Mother Earth, like who is all of our home, right? And all of our mother. And, but I think I said in one of the videos how like my actual biological mother is coming up, and I keep seeing 211 everywhere lately. 211 is my mother's birthday. And I started reading this book that I found in the house, the temple that I'm renting out for Airbnb, and where I spent a lot of my childhood or my adolescence. There was an old book there called My Mother, Myself. I think it's like written in the 70s, and I never read it. It was some paperback. And it caught my eye this time, and I just knew that I was meant to read it. And it talks about a lot of these themes of, what is passed down through mothers and daughters, like, what the collective feminine goes through, and how patterns are perpetuated. And so, like the idea that we don't fully trust love because we learn from our mothers, and our mothers were taught to usually to kind of divide themselves, right? Like, that sexuality is separate from motherhood. Like once you become a mother, you kind of, you know, try to be this perfect mother or this perfect model for what it means to be a woman, and yet most of us are taught to hide our sexuality. So it's like we're showing this half image of what it means to be a woman, and not just sexuality, but even our pursuits like self-expression or art or work. Even in modern America, women still have a inner struggle most of the time with how to be a loving mother and be available, and also to satisfy her own needs as like an individual. There's still so much guilt and shame around that, and this idea that as daughters, when we see our mother is not fully expressing herself as a complete person, it creates a divide inside ourselves, because at a subconscious level, we, even very young, we can tell that she's not totally expressing herself, right? She's not showing her who she really is. And the fact that she's hiding the sexual part of herself, right, creates this inner shame around, like, even if you weren't brought up, because I wasn't brought up with religion, like, even if you're not brought up with religion, or it's ever talked about, this shame around sexuality, then it's inherent, like, one, in our culture, in the Western culture, and two, in this divide that we have made between motherhood, or, wholesomeness and innocence, and sexuality. And I don't know what the remedy is. I don't think it's not necessarily like, you need to be like having sex in front of your children, but kind of. I mean, I do think it's like, why is everything so hidden? Because shame begins with secrets, with hiding. So that's one aspect of kind of what I've been looking at. And this is kind of fascinating to me. So I was been reading this book called The Myths of Avalon. It's a pretty famous book. A lot of people have talked about, and I've heard about it for years, and I finally started reading it. And it's like about the kind of the female perspective in the Arthurian legend and stuff of Excalibur and King Arthur. And what's interesting is that they have, so it talks a lot about this like divide between um, a religion or a culture that's centered around the feminine and nature, um, and the Christian patriarchal kind of thing, that versus that, and which is interesting because I feel like Christ's energy himself is so feminine, but the way it's been spread, and the followers of Jesus have definitely, in many ways, yeah, it's been distorted. So, and what's interesting is, so the symbol for the the older ways, the pagan ways, and the one that's more connected to nature is the dragon. And and all of a sudden I've been reading it. It's just like, it's a pretty big book. I'm like 400 pages in, and they keep talking about, like, this banner of the dragon versus the banner of, like, the cross. And suddenly it struck me that this painting that I did, this shamanic painting I did like months ago, actually I started it on Easter, was originally meant to be of the Magdalene, because I was dealing with shame around sexuality. And so I thought I would, kind of honor Mary Magdalene, and also so I could receive some insight and healing around, why this shame around sexuality, or why this fear around expressing myself or being around men, and anyway, when I was, planning to, like, kind of paint her face or something, and then what came out was a vagina, like, not on purpose. I was just painting the background, but a vagina came through. And then when I painted, and so then, I was sitting with that, like, what's that about? And it was kind of showed me this. I talked about this in another video, but it showed me this figure inside the vagina, and it was like she wanted to be heard. And so then when I painted another layer to see what she wanted to say, what I saw was a dragon. Yeah, what I saw was a red dragon. And I'm wondering how much I want to go into this. So in the book, The Mists of Avalon, so this woman who is a priestess of of the feminine and of the mother and the earth, and it's honors the sacredness of sexuality and and the wisdom of the body. And she ends up having sex with her brother in like a ritual, not knowing that it's her brother. And then she's also, like, very attracted to, like, a close cousin. And then she ends up being attracted to a stepson, so, which of course in, like, the Christian view and our modern view is seen as disgusting and vile, right? It's incestual, and what she comes to is, like, she has the insight that when life, it's like this. There's a line from a song that said, when life keeps asking you the same question, you're not learning the lesson, right? So the other way to look at it is, if you have a repeating pattern in your life, that is what you're here to learn. It's like your, that's your lesson. So to really look at what is behind that, what is it telling you? And so she was reflecting on that, and, like, why is it that all of her closest male relationships are kind of these controversial, can't think of the right word, these taboo relationships. And then she realizes that part of her reason for being, is to liberate people from these views that consider certain relationships taboo. And it's like her life is an example of the destruction that causes, And it's not like, oh, she should like keep having sex with her brother, or that she needs to marry her cousin or her stepson, but more that in having in like having shame or guilt around something that's already happened, or a natural desire that's there, how trying to hide it or suppress it, or keep it secret, how that creates a shadow that is toxic, and what that does in mass in a culture when everyone is doing that. Like the desires don't go away. It just makes it grows the shame, and shame is the place from which all of these kind of more distorted expressions come out, right? Because it's not coming, we don't act from a place of wholeness when we feel ashamed. And it reminded me, this is getting very vulnerable here, but it reminded me of a conversation where I had a couple months ago where someone asked me, what is like the deepest secret that you have, or what are you most ashamed about? And I had to think about it for a second, and then what came was I have had dreams where I have a brother, and where my brother's in them, and they feel sexual, and actually when I said it out loud, like I'm saying it out loud right here for anyone to see, it's weird because there's a part of me that's like, it's not that weird. First of all, it's a dream. It's not like something I can control, and it's not like I have like sexual feelings for my brother, But even if I did, and then what was really interesting is what he said. This was a man that asked me. I said, what is it for you? And he said, well, I didn't know. When I asked you the question, I didn't really know what it was for me. But hearing you say that, he's like, I think it's that, I have a daughter. And, sometimes I see her as like, when I see her as like a girl or a sexual being, like I feel ashamed of that. And it just struck me that this is huge, right? I mean, and I've read about this, it's nothing new. It's like the whole Oedipus complex and, what Freud talks about. But it just hit me that, how many women feel like they've been abandoned, at least emotionally, if not in other ways, by their fathers, and that men have talked about, and it's been written about, that a lot of times that happens unconsciously or consciously by the father. The father like steps back from their daughter because of this fear of their own, attraction or the sexual part of them, that somehow it's seen as wrong. And it's like, and I remember, when I was younger, I have a lot of female cousins, and my parents at some point being like, my brother Reggie, he can't sleep with the female cousins. Like, when we were young, like he has to be in his own room or something. And I just remember thinking that was so weird. Like, it's why the fact that you think that something would happen makes it seem bad, like why would that even enter your mind, But then at the same time, I've also heard that there's actually a lot of like molestation and sexual abuse that happens between brothers and sisters. So, and that environment, that, when we're young, we naturally explore, and then it can get confusing. And so I can see that there's truth to that. But again, it's like, it's a problem of our collective, it's not an individual problem. And I just feel like, well, if beings are naturally curious, yeah, I mean, I don't have the answer. I don't know what would be the right environment or what rules we should have, but I know that making people feel ashamed about feelings that are naturally arising, that's got to go,